At the end of the book, Magorian has written a very interesting set of answers to questions that people might be asking about this book, and I thought I'd read it to you. You don't have to listen to it, of course. It's entitled Answers to the Questions I Am Most Often Asked by Magorian. How long did it take you to write Goodnight Mr Tom? The first draft took me 3 years, interrupted by acting jobs when I would spend 6 days and 6 nights a week rehearsing and performing plays and musicals. The second draft took me a year. Did you like to write when you were little? Yes. When I was in what you now call Year 6, some of my classmates would ask me to read my stories to them. By the time I was 11, I had decided that my perfect life, when I grew up, would be to spend half the year acting and half the year writing. However, when I was in secondary school, writing stories wasn't encouraged, though I admit I was a bit naughty. I wrote them when I should have been writing essays. Please, can you give me some advice about writing? As well as scribbling down any ideas that come into your head, daydream about your characters. See the world through their eyes. What makes them laugh? What frightens them? If they could wave a magic wand, what would they wish for? Do they have any friends? Who are they? If not, why not? What are they good at? What are they hopeless at? Perhaps you could write about an experience they have, and maybe this will lead to a short story. Writers are so different. Some enjoy writing dialogue, others love to write descriptions. Some like to draw pictures, others like to tell their stories through animation, through the lens of a camera, or dance, or with music. Find out what works for you. Some students are told that you need to write the plot of a story first. I'm not saying that this is incorrect, but I never do. It's through getting to know my characters that I am led to the plot. And while I'm carrying out my research, my characters keep appearing in my head, and they inevitably lead me to the end of the story. Once I know that, I begin to write, so that if a certain character takes me on a detour, and sometimes they do, I still know where I'm heading. There was once a writer of detective stories who wrote her stories in quite the opposite way. She had no idea how her stories would end. She was as much in the dark as some of her characters, and would find out what happened next as she went along. Everyone is different. And when you don't have time to write stories, observe people, listen to how they talk, watch how they move, actors have to understand what makes people behave in a certain way. Writers need to do the same. Some write best in a quiet atmosphere, others among noise or with music in the background. Some write better in the morning, some at night, although I always advise people not to judge their work in the evening, because when you're tired, everything looks awful. Look at it again after a good night's sleep when your brain has been refreshed. It's easier to see what works and what doesn't work then, and you can usually sort out problems more easily. And read novels and plays, or listen to audiobooks and radio dramas, and if you can, maybe take part in youth theatre productions, either on stage or on the technical side. Do you ever get bored writing? No. But writers have good days and bad days. This is normal. On some days it can be like writing through porridge. Other days the characters are so vivid in your head that you can't write fast enough and are even surprised by what they say. What inspired you to start writing books? Well, for years I liked writing poetry, lyrics, scripts, short stories and diaries, and then one day, after completing one particular story, I had to know what happened next. That led me to Goodnight Mr Tom. A photograph I came across while carrying out research, and a scene in that book, led me to write 2 more books, Back Home and A Little Love Song. Back Home led me to write Cuckoo in the Nest. A scene in that book drew me to write A Spoonful of Jam. In Impossible, 12-year-old Josie, who was born in A Spoonful of Jam, helps a 9-year-old boy who was born in another book called Just Henry. 2 men who turned up briefly in Just Henry and Impossible led me to write about them when they were younger. In Looking for the Diamond, and the mother of my main character in Back Home moved me to find out more about women in the WVS who helped victims of the flying bombs in Kent during the Second World War, leading to Broken Soil. What has inspired me to write books have been the people who turned up in my other books. In fact, a certain person who has appeared in 3 of my books will be the main character in my next novel, and that's all I'm telling you. Where did you get the idea for Zack from? When you're writing a story, some characters grow slowly, but other characters appear out of the blue, and you know all about them instantly. When I was busy taking notes for background research for Just Henry, a boy kept popping up in my head, smiling optimistically. Even though I knew he came from a difficult background, I would say, go away, I'm trying to concentrate. But he kept on reappearing until in the end I said, okay, I give up. You're in the book. And as soon as I had made that decision, I realized how important he was in the story. His name was Pip. It was just like that with Zack. There he was. If you were not an author, what would you be? Well, before I was an author, I earned my living working in theatres, playing different roles in plays and musicals, comedies and dramas. I have used my acting side reading Back Home and A Little Love Song on audio recordings, and I like playing the different roles as I read extracts from my books during talks. And that, dear friends, is the end of Goodnight Mr Tom. I hope you've all enjoyed listening to this book and reading it with me. I thought it was a wonderful story. It's got some very sad moments in it. And considering that we have a war in the Ukraine at the moment, a lot of the things that happen in Goodnight Mr Tom are very, very moving, because it's going on right now. Mothers and fathers and children who are being hurt and killed and lost in a horrible, pointless war where a lot of people are being extremely horrible. So there's some good things in Goodnight Mr Tom, but there are also some sad things. And, well, I'm afraid that that's how life works. There's good and there's bad, and there's sad and there's happy. Goodbye, everybody. I'm so glad you were here with me reading this lovely story. Bye.